Okay, cool. So first of all, good morning, and thank you for coming to the first talk of the Asian Climbing Summit. My name is Alex Orr, and I'm here to be the moderator for these guys on developing talents. So I'm sitting back while these guys do all the talking today. I'm going to introduce first Benedict Tan, who is from Boulder. I also have Christoph here, who is from Boulder Hive in the Philippines, and I have Patrice from Boulder Planet, in Singapore, but also multiple other countries around the world, but I'm sure she'll give you an introduction in a minute. Can we start off with Ben Tan, giving herself an introduction? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Benedict. I started climbing with Camp 5 about 16 years ago, and it's really incredible where it's come, really, from when I started. I consider myself fortunate to have had the opportunity to create, bring a new product to the market 6 years ago with Bouldering. Yeah, I'm quite happy to share whatever I can do to help.
Okay, and Christoph?
Hello, good morning. My name is Christoph. Yeah, I'm from Germany, but live in Manila, Philippines, and I'm the founder of the Bouldering Hive Philippines, or we just call it Hive. And yeah, we'll have the discussion. Are we going to have the slide for the introduction?
I was just trying to get that up. Kelvin, do you mind putting the slides up for me?
So, Bouldering Hive Philippines, Manila. This is me. I founded Hive in 2019. We opened the first gym, and this is about me. I grew up in Munich, a bit south, lake country, right in front of the Alps, and I studied environmental engineering in Innsbruck, Austria, which is just like a 2-hour drive south. And I worked for a climbing company called Art Rock Climbing Walls for 4 years. They mainly manufacture climbing walls, and they had a small hold production back then, which I was the head of the hold production for the 4 years and the backup guy for building climbing walls. So that's kind of where I learned how to build walls, and then applied that in 2019 and built Hive. My wife is from Manila. We met in Innsbruck on her semester abroad, and after we got married, we moved to Manila in 2018, and then opened Hive. And yeah, barely survived the pandemic. But we made it and just opened our second branch last year. And it's been going amazing since last year. And it's been really fun seeing it blossom in the Philippines. Lots of things happening. People are excited. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. And yeah, so we already started planning for our third gym, but we're leaving it at 2 kids. So here, just to give you an idea. This is just the slogan. I honestly forgot what it says, and I'm just gonna go to the next slide to show you the first gym, which 2019. Back when we opened, the climbing halls were very different still. We were just talking about this the other day, how much it has changed from 5 years ago. The holds I order now are much different. And yeah, we just installed this compass board. We had a spray ball before, and we have a grasshopper board. The new gym is planned by Patrice, and we built with Watopia walls, which was quite nice because the first gym I did completely DIY, from walls to mats. Everything was we just had to figure it out and do it ourselves. And the mats didn't last very long, so it's nice to have now lots more companies that offer professional products, I have to say. That wasn't the case in 2019. Yeah, and the climbing community in the Philippines is really growing a lot. I feel like we went from being very niche to all of a sudden everyone talks about climbing, and people like, oh, you own the climbing gym. I'm like, you heard about us. Yeah. So the community is also very competition focused. They love having comps, and the energy is amazing, I have to say. Compared to comps I've seen, like especially fun comps, the Philippines has a very unique energy. It gets crazy and loud, and it's really fun. And we have our upcoming comp end of the month, which is Rocka Manila, where we sold out within hours for most of the categories. The girls are a bit more hesitant, unfortunately, but the guys, we sold out within hours and had too many requests. And yeah, so we're excited for that comp. And if you guys are owners of a brand and are interested in sponsorship, let me know. We always look for sponsors. It's very hard. Sponsoring for comps, always a struggle. So yeah, that's us, Hive Philippines. Passing it on to Patrice.
Okay, I will stand so I can see my own slides. Hi everyone, my name is Patrice, Pat Rice, if it makes it easier to remember. So I'm actually from the Philippines. And then I moved to Singapore. So yay, Filipino, let's go. So representing Southeast Asia in many different ways. So I'm a co-owner and director of Boulder Planet Southeast Asia. So, but before I started operating climbing gyms in Singapore, Thailand, and Indonesia, I started out as a part-timer at On-Site Climbing Gym back when I was 17 years old. I cleaned toilets, I wiped rental shoes, I dusted off the mats, closed the gym, opened the gym, done everything. So this topic of developing talents in our industry is quite close to my heart because it is something that I have grown in, quite literally, from when I was a teenager all the way now into my 30s. So a little bit of background on how I started in this journey. So in 2011, I started at Serangoon Junior College. That's when I started climbing. And I continued on and worked part-time at On-Site Climbing Gym as a part-time crew and freelance instructor. So this is where I started my experience on how to run climbing gyms, what goes on behind the scene. And then in 2014, I needed to go to school. So I went to National University of Singapore, took Bachelor of Arts. I majored in English Literature, minor in Theatre Studies, and I became the Team NUS climbing captain. Literally has nothing to do with what I do now, right, my degree. But, okay, so I studied English Literature, and part of my training is to analyze characters, understand motivations. And right now, when you are developing talent, that is an important part of it, understanding people's motivations, how to read them, how to understand what goes on behind the scene. And same thing for theater studies. You know, sometimes you have to be in front of people to advocate for climbing, to advocate for people, to advocate for your events. So that training provided me to be on this stage. And Team NUS climbing captain, so throughout the years, I have organized climbing competitions, events based on that experience captaincy in NUS. And fresh off graduating with an English degree, instead of becoming a teacher, I decided that I would join the climbing industry full-time. So I joined another climbing gym in Singapore called Boulder Movement, and I was the program's executive. So I planned climbing classes, programs, corporate events, and so on. But in 2019, I have an identity crisis because everyone around me will go into corporate training, going 9 to 5, climbing the corporate ladder, and I wanted to see if I could do it for myself, because if you could see, all I did in my entire life was climbing. So I needed to prove to myself I can do something else. And so I joined HubSpot, which is a software as a service global company that has headquarters in the US and operation across the world, including Asia Pacific. So I was there in terms of learning the customer support specialist, so I learned a lot in terms of tech training. And from there, my corporate training taught me how to scale companies, how to establish workplace cultures, and also how to operate with rigor on a global scale. At the same time, I didn't really leave climbing. I continued to freelance as a climbing coach. In 2021, after the pandemic and after I paid out our house mortgage, yes, I didn't need the 9-to-5 salary anymore. I was like, yeah, let's take a pay cut and go to Boulder Planet, right? So back into the climbing industry. So we started Boulder Planet in 2021 in the thick of the pandemic. And then just last year, we expanded to Boulder Planet Thailand and Boulder Planet Indonesia. And today, we are here in this adventure, being able to speak and share with you all what I have learned across the years. And also I want to take this opportunity to thank Asian Climbing Summit for having me. All right, so let me share about Boulder Planet in terms of our talent structure or our manpower structure. So Boulder Planet Singapore has 2 gyms, 1 showroom, 6 full-time staff. Boulder Planet Thailand has 1 gym, 5 full-time staff. Boulder Planet Indonesia has 1 gym and 10 full-time staff. So under my belt, together with my management team, we have 21 full-time staff. And on top of that would be a bunch of part-timers and freelancers that help with the day-to-day operations. So my main role with all of my full-time staff is to drive performance and to make sure that they are delivering their key KPIs. And so my touch point from different employees, different team members differs depending on the level of engagement I have with them, which also means that in terms of their development, their talents also differs based on the amount of oversight I have in the department that they have. So mostly for myself, it would be the marketing and the events. So since we're talking about talent development, I think it's important to touch on how it is that done in terms of at least my own leadership style. So for myself, the 3 key approaches I have would be empathy, radical candor, and structure. So empathy. So at the heart of every operation, every climbing gym or any company, it's people. And it's no longer a time where people separate themselves, where professional self is one thing and personal self is another. People bring their whole selves to the company. So to treat an employee, a team member, as if they're just someone there to do day in, day out operations is no longer relevant in this age. It's not as differentiated anymore. What goes on in their homes, their relationship, they bring it to work, whether they want to or not, and it manifests. So what we want to create in our work environment is that environment that supports the entire team and understand them as people, not just as employees. Next is radical candor. Of course, empathy is not just about, oh, we love each other, hugs, high five vibes, right? You still have to be accountable to the work. So it's important to provide feedback, to have tough conversations when you have to, when things are going sideways, yet at the same time be able to deliver that constructively and with compassion. I think the old school way last time is there is a little bit of brutal honesty sometimes in terms of performance review, in terms of telling people how they are performing. But I think as leaders, as gym owners or people in the industry, I think it's very important that we develop the skill set of being able to deliver feedback that is compassionate and constructive. And of course, the first 2 points is very relationship-based, right? Empathy and radical candor. But at the end of it, structure should be put in place. What this means is that regardless of who the person is, the business needs to run. So if you are able to have SOPs, frameworks, criteria on how you manage your performance, how you manage your KPIs, your metrics, then it's clear whoever takes that position. And at the same time, all of this work as well. You can only have radical candor when they know what they're supposed to deliver. And you can have empathy when you understand their position in your company and their position as a person. So this is my approach in terms of developing talent. And so that is it for my sharing. So I hope we can continue to connect after this. You can add me on LinkedIn at Verosil Patrice or at The Rice Grain so we can continue this conversation. And now, excited to have this conversation with Benedict and Christoph and Alex. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. So I think we'll go straight into some key questions here. I think we wanted to start off this conversation with like the full circle of developing talent. The first question we have for you guys is to do with attracting talent. This is how do we attract talent when we're competing against higher paying and more enticing industries? So who would like to start off on this one? Do you want me to repeat the question? Yeah. How do we attract talent when we're competing against higher paying and more enticing industries? Ben, do you want to go ahead?
So the interesting thing about the situation here, at least for us with bump bouldering, is we've been very lucky. We've somehow managed to attract mostly very overqualified staff from the get-go. Pretty much all our staff are tertiary educated, the majority of which degree holders. So we don't have so much of that problem. But yes, the most people who join our industry, we do realize that they are taking a pay cut in order to join this industry, mostly out of passion. But at the same time, I think one of the big discussions that we're going to have here is how do we sustain that? How do we make this, quote unquote, a real job? I myself am from the video game industry, which for the longest time was considered not a real job. And now it's, I believe, a $200 billion industry and projected to grow beyond as well. So I think the same is largely true for an industry like ours, where it's growing. And it's up to us to create more opportunity and more legitimacy with all the supporting industries in order to have a flourishing environment.
I think in the Philippines we're a bit in an earlier stage still. We're like, we still have a lot of trouble attracting talent from outside of the climbing community, I'd say. But I have to say from within the climbing community, we've had great additions to the team that just because they've been already climbing and within the community for many years, they were ready to step up and grow with the company. And that was, so we're more in that stage, and we're, I think, just starting to find a way to attract people from outside of the climbing community, which is for us very hard still, because like you said, the pay cut is a big hurdle, and I think what drives people, I mean, most of our new hires is really they want free climbing when it comes to the freelance stuff. Oh, we want to climb for free. It's the #1 answer when they applied for why they applied for the job. And you need to sift through a lot of people to be like who fits the team and who will be, let's say, more self-sufficient and not just focused on free climbing.
For Boulder Planet, how we usually approach this question about compensation, I could be compensated more outside, is that we have to be upfront about it, right? As an industry, we are not gonna pay like an MNC, we are not gonna pay like a tech industry or a banking industry. We move as the industry move. So firstly, being upfront about that, especially for people who are overqualified with choices, they need to know that these are the options, and that they are not coming in here blind, expecting, I should be paid 10,000 SGD per month because that's what I earn if I go somewhere else, which is not realistic for the industry itself at this current time. So being upfront about that is very important. What an alternative we can provide is, one is free climbs, for sure. The other is to provide a pathway that is different and maybe fits their lifestyle. So yes, there are, I think, things that you need to give up as well when you are in a corporate job, in a 9 to 5. Yes, you earn a lot of money, but maybe you don't have as much control in your time, or maybe because it's a big company, you are already, it's very hard to grow or move. Whereas I think in climbing industry, I think it's still pretty mobile. It's almost startup at every stage, trying to scale up at each point. So if this is something that excites the potential team member or whoever, then this is something that you can push forward and say, we are moving startup to scale up. Is this something that excites you? Is this something that you want? Yes, you will not get as paid as much, but you will learn a lot and really fast. So that's one thing. And for myself, I mean, I've shown you all my journey. I went into corporate and found out at the end of the day that my heart is here. So passion, really, passion is very important. So I think what was great for me at least is that I knew I could always come back. So let's say we do have people who join the team and they realize they have options and the priorities in life have changed, so they need to earn more money. We let them, right? Let them pursue it. And then keep the door open should they come back. Because it's a boon for us. They're going to bring back those skill sets that they're now coming back to more sure than ever with the same passion and with clear understanding what this industry means to them. Yeah.
Thank you. So I know for myself that I accidentally fell into the climbing industry, and I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people here. For climbing gyms like ourselves, do you have any advice for these guys who are potentially looking to open gyms or own gyms for attracting talents into the gym? Like, what resources are you using? Because we can't always rely on luck, that someone just falls through the door or someone is in your community and they are the perfect person for the role. What resources are you using to reach out to those people?
Instagram, mostly. I mean, we do post also on some of the local like job sites, but get very little response. Mostly, I think, because the vast majority doesn't know what climbing still is. But for us, yeah, we get a lot of feedback from within the community, and I think it's just gonna go from there. And I don't know how you guys do it.
So I think that maybe our situation is slightly different because we created our gyms in quite established kind of climbing communities and climbing cultures. So I think when we opened, and I think it's probably true in Indonesia and Thailand as well, where the core teams were already climbers. People already knew what they were signing up for, and people wanted to do it. It may be very different in an environment that where you don't have the same kind of established culture. So it really depends on where you guys are coming from. Are you able to tap into the local talent that already exists, and are you able to recruit them? So if you guys are interested in opening up your own businesses, your own gyms, you kind of have to know where your initial manpower pool is and how you can foster more. I think over time, initially we were very selective about the kind of people that we brought on, because we knew that we were establishing a company culture from the get-go. And over time, we've had to make adjustments. People come, people go. And we also prune as well to make sure that we have the kind of work environment that we really want in order to have people come in, be healthy, happy, and productive.
So in terms of recruiting, basically, in Singapore, it was a lot of network and referral. So people who have part-time and work in the industry already, and then they come. I think for Thailand, actually, this is a very young industry. So actually, our general manager in Thailand only started climbing like 6 months before we opened Boulder Planet. So she was bringing a whole different skill set. She came from a sales background, and then she decided to take a break from that, and then she decided to join the industry part-time, and then that's where we found her. So I think keeping an open mind where skills may not necessarily always have to come from the climbing industry, it could come from outside, though there is some compromise on that as well, because then the learning curve is quite steep into understanding what the consumer wants, especially the climbing profile. So they also have to start climbing and understand what's the hype is all about. For Indonesia, I think it's a little bit different because Indonesia has a really big pool of athletes, national athletes. And actually part of that is actually their full-time job sometimes, being an athlete. And then when they retire, they decide that, okay, they still want to continue in the industry. So then that's when they joined us. So different contexts, different markets have different approaches to it.
Thank you. Okay, so now that we have our employees of the month through the door, how do we keep them inside the gym and inside the company that we want to make them thrive? So what strategies do we use to retain these talent?
For us, it's mostly the community. BOMP has and I'm sure this is true of many workplaces across, where we all tend to stick together. I hesitate to use the word family, but it does feel like that quite a lot. Granted, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. There was always things that you have to manage in terms of disputes. Not everybody integrates the same way, but we always try to be tolerant and respectful in that way. But yeah, I would like to know how you guys do it too, actually.
Yeah, for us, I think a lot of it is just building friendships within the staff. Also, a lot of them really kind of come in young as freelancers, and then we have a lot of coming and going with our freelancers, but there's always a few that stay for longer, and they grow a lot, and I feel like there's a lot of good friendships there, and I think the community is really like a big part of that, in just terms of just how connected the staff is with the other members, and how they I feel like how they personally grow once they take on the job. Because I do have to say, we get a lot of like just fresh grads, and they come in not knowing any kind of job, and they kind of like, we always call them the babies, and they quickly learn a lot of times, but we also get people that stay 2 months and just leave because they didn't grow. And I feel like when the friendship and connection is there, though, that growth happens, and I feel like the culture, the corporate culture, is more like everyone has their personal things and needs to personally grow, and we're all trying to improve ourselves and at the same time improving how we do business. So I feel like for us, we don't have very clear structures. We have our SOPs, but I think for us it's very clear that if you start for us, you need to show that you're growing with the company, and that you're trying to improve yourself and how you do your job, and that you're at least willing to work on it, and not just be like, what do I do, and I'm out of here.
Christoph, how much time do you spend personally in the gym?
In the gym lately, not that much.
I mean, who's creating that family atmosphere? Or sorry, not family atmosphere. Who's creating that friendly, building relationships with your staff?
Yeah, we have in each gym. We basically have our like we call it like a gym manager, basically, and they're very much the go-to person for the staff to have any sort of problem conversations. Yeah. So, and then at the same time, we still have an HR employee. She manages more like the problems, gives out verbal and written warnings. For example, we just recently had someone that stole, new hire, and had to let them go right away because they showed no remorse. And so I feel like we keep that a bit separate, that they have sort of like a shoulder to cry on, but at the same time, the HR comes in only when necessary, and it's not the same person. But I usually go to each of my gyms once a week, and check in, and I often have a good chat with the staff, and they let me know if there's any issues, but mostly it's great. Come in and good vibes, and I have to say it's very different from when you first start your gym. It's mostly just problems and you're just problem solving every time, and then it's nice to build a team that can problem solve and take things over, and you just come in and maybe help out with one or two problems here and there, and they can manage themselves now.
So I think there are many approaches to retaining talents. I think it really depends on the culture and the team dynamics that you want. Some is more, I think, flexible, informal. Some would be a bit more structured. So for Boulder Planet, I would say it leans a bit more structured. So first thing that I do is I kind of profile my team. So there are two types of employees in a main bucket. You have superstars and you have rock stars. Superstars are people who want to climb the ladder. They want to be promoted, they want to be paid more, they want the title. Rock stars are people who are like, I just want to do my thing day in, day out. I will do it well, I will do what I'm asked, but do not ask me to lead, do not ask me to take more responsibilities than what I have been asked for. So knowing the profile of your team allows you to plan a path for them, because you're not going to put a rock star profile in the superstar. They're not going to be happy, and a superstar will not be happy in a rock star position. And in the climbing industry, there are certain roles that is more leaning towards one. Like for example, operations. Operations manager, I would think is more a rock star role. Like day in, day out, you need to do the thing, right? I think for route setters, I think it's a superstar role. You start as an apprentice, you become an associate, and then you become a junior, senior, head, regional leader. So that's how it is. So certain roles kind of lean into a certain profile, and so you need to know your team and what they want, what are their motivations. That's one. The other two is having structured one-on-ones. So I don't have one-on-ones with 21 people in my team, but I do have structured one-on-ones with the entire Singapore team, the general manager of Thailand, and the general manager of Indonesia, and my entire marketing team in Indonesia. So the touch point varies, and it usually lasts about 45 minutes conversation about not just the task, but what's going on in their lives, what is the outlook on the company, and so on. So this is how I stay on the ground to understand what's happening, and also manage performance across the board, and feel if they're gonna leave or they're gonna stay, and understand and solve the problems before they become even bigger problems. And the last part in terms of retaining talent is actually having clear performance evaluation. So, and performance evaluation shouldn't come as a shock, it should be a summary. So you could do this in your company, you could do this once a year, depending on your financial cycle and whatnot. And then the performance evaluation need to be clear on how it relates to reward, right? So you're not just performance evaluating people for fun. You're doing it because you're telling them that if you do this, you'll get compensated, you'll get more, you get a new title, and so on. So having that clarity in terms of what is required for them, what will get them more, makes them perform better and keeps them staying, because there's something to look forward to. There's a goal for them in the next step. So in summary, for Boulder Planet, we start with profiling our employees where they fit, so the culture fit and the role fit, and then having that structured one-on-ones and touch points with them. And the last part is performance evaluation and how that links to rewards. So this is our retainment strategy.
Thank you. Can we
Can I add?
Yes.
I find it very interesting that you you have all these roles lined up. For us, that's basically what we're working on. Because as a smaller company, you're like, a lot of times you're like, well, we don't have that next step yet, until you're like, well, now we need someone to fill this role. but the position often isn't there yet. It needs to be created, and sometimes it maybe you need to hire someone new, and sometimes someone existing can fill that role. We actually called our crew that took over from part-time to first-time, we call them super crew. So that's a bit similar. So they were just regular crew, front desk, and then after a couple of months, they showed more interest, and we basically gradually transitioned them to more responsibilities like closing and opening, and then slowly they become full-timers. But usually that takes about a year, and within that year you see if they're more serious or not. But yeah, it's for us that's very interesting, because I feel like that retaining talent, yeah, you need to create those positions, and at the same time for a smaller company like us, those positions don't exist yet, and we don't have like, oh, you can become this next, like. But I feel like in a lot of ways it just comes down to having conversations with them about what responsibilities can they take on next, and not like necessarily creating a new role, but expanding their role. Yeah.
I think the kind of elephant in the room there is the scaling factor for employee progression is a lot to do with the company growth. So if you don't have a clear plan for your company's growth, it's very difficult to scale that. But yeah, I think clearly, I think Boulder Planet has quite a good plan for that overall. Yeah, I don't have much to add to that.
I mean, just to add to this, like, let's take an extreme example of headsetter. I don't know where else a headsetter would go other than headsetter. So there is a possibility that I have taken everything I can learn from here. What's next for me? What can the company do for me, right? And like Christoph said, it's expanding the role rather than a new job title or more compensation, or maybe an ownership of what the company is building. So these are things that I think big companies do actually, where if they want a sense of ownership for their employees, they tell them, okay, you can, but you have to stay longer if you want real ownership of the company. So those are just a few things that I think we can take from industries outside of us and how they retain employees. But I don't think it's easy to do at all. This requires a lot of like structure in terms of like how you're gonna do that in terms of like company financing and structure and so on.
The consulting firm strategy.
Yes.
Yeah. When you talk about ownership, do you actually put a clause in the contract that they need to stay a certain amount of years, or do you just hope for the best because?
Okay, so I think personally, when I joined Boulder Movement, that was one of the things that enticed me to join, actually. It was part of my contract that they say that once the company is valuated at a certain level and the company is performing at this level, that they will give me a certain number of ownership should I stay until that point in time. So then that hinges on the growth of the company. The company has to grow for you to earn any part of it. So there is vested interest in me for the company to grow now, even though I don't own it yet, because eventually I should. Yeah.
So it's earned up front. Yeah. Yeah? That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. I think I'm just going to move on a little bit from the conversation we're having at the moment. There was something that we wanted to discuss, and Ben, actually, you brought this up, is something about the difference in generations in our workforce. Obviously, a lot of us here are a little bit older than some of the staff that we work with. So could you maybe touch on your kind of thoughts on how we manage different generations? I'm talking about Gen Z, Gen whatever, millennial. Yeah.
Okay. So a little bit more about me. I was born in 1982, so that makes me kind of an older millennial. And when we started the company was primarily younger millennials or mid. And gradually we've moved into more and more of a Gen Z workforce. So on the lighthearted end of the spectrum, I would say that one thing that you kind of want to do straight off the bat is understand their memes, understand their culture. It's kind of important for you to have basically an understanding of their language, right? So that's the first aspect. The second aspect is the expectations of the younger generations does change a lot of things in the workforce. When you're talking to Gen Zs, a lot of them have a very structured approach to what they're asking for, what they expect, and that's really based on what their culture tells them. I'm not saying that all Gen Zs are like this. In fact, I would say that it's a minority that of Gen Zs that we tend to hire, but there is clearly a difference in the way that they want to approach things, and even things like technological acceptance. My Gen Z staff are much more likely to use, say for example, ChatGPT to do their work, but they have a lot less experience with actually doing the work. So if you're talking about something like copywriting, unless you're a skilled copywriter, it's very difficult for you to tell whether or not what the AI is giving you is wrong or right. So for an inexperienced staff member using a tool like that, it can often end up in a disaster, and we have gotten into trouble a couple of times over the past couple of years because we were not so careful with using this technology. So there are some pitfalls moving forward with things like this, but it really comes down to paying a lot of attention to the change in culture, the change in technology as well.
What exactly do you mean they know what they're asking for, Gen Z? I'm not sure I follow.
Right. So one thing that we are very particular about at Bump, at least, is the way that we convey the message, communicating to customers. We're very careful with our language, with our words, to make sure that the right tone of the message comes across. So if you're not careful, then what the AI can generate can be somewhat insensitive.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, you said the Gen Z employees, they know more what they're asking in terms of what they want, like out of the job or pay, or what did you mean with that?
Yes. So a lot of Gen Zs, they get their information. Because they use ChatGPT to do research. They'll often generate an expectation based on like I'm this old. I want to earn this much by this time. You know, and that may not be the reality that you're dealing with in your industry.
I see. That makes sense. Yeah.
I like this part because so whenever you interview people, usually as an interviewer, you have to negotiate pay, you have to negotiate compensation. Most of the time, I interview millennials. Yeah, I tell them X number, and they're like, "All right, I'll take it to review." Right? When you interview Gen Z, they'll be like, "Is this probation, or is there a chance for me to earn more? What are the KPIs for me to earn more?" So that they are more open to disrupt whatever it is, to negotiate, because they do have the knowledge and the skill set now from online, where people are taught how to negotiate for fairer pay for themselves, which is good. It advocates for themselves. Yet at the same time, it is a shock sometimes because as a company you have a budget, right? And then all of a sudden this Gen Z is trying to negotiate with you for a higher pay, and then you realize, okay, so then what? Where do we go from here? We're gonna be doing this teeter-tottering of like negotiating, and I'm dancing with this like 19-year-old about their part-time pay. Yeah, which I don't do with my full-timers. So that is really one of the interesting personalities they have. But
I'm surprised you are negotiating for part-time pay, because for us, we say this is what we offer. It's a take it or leave it offer for part-time position. For us, like there's no negotiation, and I do have to say a lot of times, because I mean these are like fresh out of university often, or maybe even just do it on the side. they don't negotiate on our end. Like I don't. That's why I'm surprised. Yeah.
We don't negotiate either for part-timers, but you know, it's to a certain degree, it's a shortcut, right? It's a shortcut straight into the Dunning-Kruger effect, where they don't understand the significance of what they're asking for.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think we're going to move on to talent continuality, which is a nice way of putting it. Got a nice question here. How do we create a pipeline in our talent pool to ensure continuity when someone leaves? So when someone leaves the company, how do we make sure that we fill the gap with that they're moving on to?
We always have a little bit of redundancy in the team. Everybody is, to a degree, there's almost no position that we have that there's only one person ever doing it. So that protects us a little bit, because it's not just about somebody leaving the team voluntarily. It's somebody. What if that person gets hit by a car? You know. So you do have to protect yourself a little bit for these kind of situations. Even looking at redundancy for yourself, right? So there is a lot of that keeps us a little bit insulated. That keeps us a little bit more safe. But we always are looking out for progressions, right? Almost every position that we have in the company there's a senior, there's a junior, and the junior will take over from the senior at some point. That's kind of the structure that we work with.
So, as Benedict have said, so training and being able to cross-train between departments is important. Also, being able to have your SOPs, your frameworks, so that the person that is learning or taking over can take over, understand the systems and the premise behind the system. And also having proper handovers. So obviously in a company there are more key roles. Requires a lot more knowledge transfer. So for that, let's say you would probably need a longer runway in terms of handover, in terms of overlap between the new person coming in and the person that is outgoing. So planning for that is important, being able to have that enough time. So maybe some roles, 1 month notice is enough. Maybe some roles do need 2 months notice and so on. So it really depends. But also there is also that being, like you said, right, having senior and junior, then they can learn from each other. And the last part, when it comes to talent basically leaving the company, as mentioned earlier, we want them to come back eventually. So being able to close that door in a compassionate, constructive way is very important, so that they can always come back. And for myself, I always aspire to, help my team grow in a way where they can go anywhere and they are wanted everywhere. But at the same time, build a company culture that they choose to stay. So that's, I think, the most ideal scenario for a company and for a team.
How important is individual business growth, as in a single company, and also a community growth for your talent continuity? Is it, if we're looking at people moving from different gyms or within your organization, but also different gyms in the climbing industry, the whole ecosystem? How important is this for your businesses?
So the interesting thing with new gyms opening up and people leaving for those new gyms, it tends to leave a void. And voids tend to be filled. So it's really interesting because, especially with, I'm sure that everybody knows that quite a number of new gyms opened up last year here in Malaysia. So we had a little bit of attrition, not only in our staff, but also in our customer base. And what that left was a space where everybody who was remaining was able to rebuild with a culture that was more of their, more under their control I'm not sure how to put it any other way, but that void was filled, and I would say that it's been filled in a way that, we like what we see now, So there's always new beginnings, I would say, and this is there's an expansion of the industry that tends to happen like this. And you kind of have to look at it and say that, you know, these things happen. People get off-boarded. You know, we want everybody to stay friends as well. I think that's the way that we want things to go. And some people, they leave because they don't really have a choice. They have life responsibilities that they can't overlook anymore. Sometimes people leave because you're not happy. But in any case, that you try not. I mean, there's no point in keeping somebody who doesn't want to stay.
Yeah, I think leaving the door open is a nice phrase, because like I think we're all still, the climbing community is growing, but everyone is connected. We talk to each other, and so for us also, we're just honest. I feel like as long as you're honest and you're like, this is not working because XYZ, I don't see any issue like with somebody coming back to, for example, and re-employing them if ever it's meant to be. And for example, our first gym manager, she kind of quit out of the blue, but then now she opened her own gym, and like we even gave her tips and helped her out and so on. So I feel like for us, it's just about open communication and being honest with each other. And yeah, we're like, most likely that person will stay within the climbing community. So yeah, I feel like keeping it friendly, keeping it respectful, like you said, is key. And you don't want to be like, ah, I'm done with you and so on. Well, like that's part of being professional, I think, also, that you don't take it badly. If somebody moves on, I'm happy to help them move on.
Goodbye should be good.
Yeah.
I think, Christoph, you said something about like, making sure that everything is okay and that, they are happy when they leave, let them go if they want to go. And I think that one thing that I learned from working in MNC is that when people leave, they mostly leave for their own personal factors. Maybe they need more pay because they are supporting more people, they have families and whatnot. Unless you're really very terrible to your employees, it's rarely because I hate you, unless really it's like that. So most of the time people take into account what they need. So I think as leaders, gym managers, we can't take it personally when people leave. We have to be happy for when they leave and understand that they have their own reason. Yet as a company, we cannot be beholden and we cannot let ourselves be threatened as well by one person leaving and then say, without me, you're gone. That is why your SOPs and your frameworks are important. And that's why you plan for redundancies, because at the same time, the business needs to be sustainable. It needs to continue. Yeah, at the same time, you're not treating your people like you're ready for them to go as well. You want to retain and have good relationships with them. So it is a balance of all of that.
Okay, great. I would like to open the floor now to any questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to, put your hands up and shout it out.
So what we do is we basically have the marketing girl. I'm just calling her that right now. So she handles those applications, and we basically just I'm gonna have like her present her choices to us. I actually don't do the interviews anymore. For me, that's something I learned. I did like the interviews, and we were kind of like there, and we had some bad experience with that. because the Filipinos were very shy with me there. And there was a bit of a cultural, I think, clash in terms of, like, I'm very open and talkative, and most of the Filipinos that, especially when they apply for a job and they're very young, they're very shy, and the interviews were unproductive often. So I kind of removed myself from that quickly and had better results with that. So we sift through people more like by, first of all, do they live close enough to the gym? Because if they don't live close enough, they're going to be late a lot because traffic is bad. So proximity is a major factor, because we just had so many bad experiences with people applying and be like, yeah, I can do it, and then they couldn't make the commute and be on time, and we even up to now have issues with that. And the second one was just, we do a test trial day. They come in, work for a day, and they get a free day pass for it, and they just kind of, how do they click with the team? And I think for us that was the major factor, just how is the chemistry with the other team members, and how do they pick up things, like, can they quickly operate the POS? Can they talk to customers, or are they just shy? What do I do? And so a lot of times it's just putting them in the situation and doing a trial. I think for us the trial changed a lot, because we didn't do that at first, and once we started doing the usually they do 1 or 2 trials, that changed a lot and made it much smoother.
So, sorry, was your question primarily for full-time or part-time staff, or both? Right, okay. So for full-time staff, we generally look for people who want to exercise agency and take initiative. That's probably, like, if people have a good attitude towards work and they are willing to take risks, then it makes it very easy for them to teach, because they'll confront the mistake very quickly, and then they'll also learn and move past it. On the part-timer end, it's a little bit different. We look for mostly the people who are, punctual. They want to take responsibility in that way. You're in a good place when your other part-timers are giving criticisms for each other, and they're demanding that each other work better. So that's what you really want to look for. And of course, we have trial periods as well. That's a very good strategy. It allows you to assess whether or not this candidate is a good fit for the team. We tend to get a lot more applications that we can use. And when necessary, we also put out hiring posts as well.
So for Boulder Planet, I would divide it into 2. So I think, and for full-timers specifically, first thing that we look for is aptitude. So basically the fit into the actual skill set that they need to, whether they have it or not, or whether the experience is very deep already or not yet. So that will, and also because the skill set will judge how well they will take to the offer as well, right? If you're offering an entry-level pay, but the person has really high skill set, then maybe it's a mismatch. So that is on the aptitude side of it. But you mentioned character, right? So this is on the attitude side of it. I think one of the key things that we look for is self-awareness, because self-awareness will segue into being coachability. So it doesn't matter whether you already have the skills or not, so long as you are aware of where you stand and what skills and what weaknesses you have, then being coachable will be something that you will be receptive to, right? So being aware, being coachable, and being able to accept feedback. So most of the time in interview questions, my questions will revolve around this. Like, tell me at a time where someone has given you a critical feedback. How did you respond to it? Or, for example, what is one thing that you thought was a failure, and how did you learn from that? So having these behavioral questions during your interview will help you assess. But obviously, some people can perform very well in interviews. So having this trial period is really important. And it's not just good for us to see the fit, it's also good for them to see the fit and see the reality of working in a climbing gym.
Yeah, on the reality, you need to, I feel like a lot of times to explain. You're gonna have to do a little bit of cleaning. You know? If they're not okay with a lot of times, we have like, oh, they're like, I thought I'll just stand here and look pretty and talk to people. I was like, yeah. So I feel like a lot of times, yeah, we get a lot of no experience, no job whatsoever before, and it's a lot about just seeing, are they willing to do it? Yeah. And like you said, coachability, I think that's a really good point. Like, how do they are self-aware? Confidence, I think, is also really, for us, that's something we saw a lot. If they lack the confidence, a lot of times they go under quickly.
I think one of the things that is kind of unique about working in the climbing industry, even as a part-timer, even as a full-timer, is that a lot of people realize it's very hard work very quickly. And you will have candidates who reject that almost immediately, but a lot of people actually take to it because of the sense of camaraderie that you get at working in a climbing gym where everybody is throwing in behind each other. And there's a lot to be gained about that. And a lot of staff that we've had, past, present, you know, they appreciate that kind of environment. That's what they're there for, and they realize that very quickly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ice. Any more questions? Hello, yes.
We personally tend to think that attitude matters more. You can have very talented individuals, you can have very capable individuals, but if they're not a good fit for your team, if they're not a good fit for our team, certainly we tend to look at that and be like, you know, maybe not. We tend to hire based on not where people are, but where we see they could be. I see. So if they're already in your structure, I would say that you don't really have a choice. You do need to try to work with them and try to just have the honest discussions, you know. Once people are in it, then you don't really have a choice. You just have to be honest, and you can't beat around the bush too much. But yeah, like that would probably be the best strategy moving forward. We have a very we feel very strongly about telling the truth, because that's the only way that you can confront the issue correctly.
I do have a very real example for this. And this is one of the most tough conversations I've had in my experience at Boulder Planet. We had a star route setter with us at that time. And I think because the skill set is really high, definitely it was good for the company, was good for the growth of the company. And yet, at the same time, there was difference in attitude. So then you come to a point where is the aptitude, the skill set, is it enough to make up for the attitude of being not a team player, always saying no, not participating in the big picture agenda? I just want to do my own thing. Like, is there something that you want to tolerate in your company is the first question you need to ask. Because if even if you don't say yes to this, by keeping this person, you are signaling that to your team. You can act out whatever you want, so long as you are good at your job, we will keep you. Then you will have that culture inside your team where everyone's a diva, right? Everyone will act like, oh, without me, your company cannot run. So then that puts you in a very big position where your business may not be sustainable because you're always trying to manage this culture where people are using this as a leverage, right? So between choosing an all superstar high skill set versus attitude, I would rather take the time to train someone new and wait for them to grow into the role because they have the right attitude. They are a team player, they are coachable, and they are self-aware. They are able to contribute to the bigger picture rather than just serving their own personal agenda. So, and it's not just so much in terms of like what each person feels. It's not exactly personal. It's the culture that you want to see in your team, right? What you don't tackle is what you are signaling that you allow. So even if they are already in the company, obviously there are structures to it. You don't just cut them right away. You surface it. So earlier on I said radical candor, right? So we will go ahead and say, hey, your performance is not up to par. And then this person will come back, but I'm the best here. And then you tell them, but best is not just on your job role. Best is also how you do the job role and how people feel about you when you do your role. If you make other people feel like shit and they don't want to work with you, I shouldn't keep you. And I'm telling you now, and I'm giving you time to adjust. So you give them time to adjust. You give them, say, within 2 months, I would like to see a change in your behavior. If after that 2 months there is no change in behavior, then it is clear what the next step is. We offboard the person and we make it fair, and they recognize these were the metrics. We gave you a chance. It is all in writing, and so there is no way that they can say, oh, you didn't give me a chance to change. You didn't even let me know. So I think these are some of the approach we have taken at Boulder Planet. It was a really tough conversation, and not a conversation I always want to have. So actually the main solution here is to hire right from the beginning so that you don't have this problem while they are in your company. Yeah.
Hire, that would be great, yeah. But I have to say, a lot of people where we were like, we hired them, had high hopes for them, were not the people that we ended up filling the role with. A lot of times it's like the people you have had the best skill set, and we were like, you should be doing that. In the end, where they were like, no, I'm moving on to something else, and we had to fill that role with somebody that had very little experience in it, but showed that they're willing to learn and can improve. So I think a lot of times you need to be, I guess, flexible also for the hires, because I had so many times where I'm like, you should be doing that, and then the person was like, yeah, I can do that, but I don't want to. And you have to find somebody that doesn't know how to do it, but they want to do it. Yeah.
I'm just going to have to stop us here. Yeah, we have actually run out of time, guys. So I'm sure if you can have this conversation with these guys later on. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to bump into these guys. I think you're here all the next 2 days. Yeah, cool. So thank you very much to Patrice and to Ben and to Christoph. And thank you to you guys to come in. We're just going to stop there. And of course, bump into these guys if you have any further questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.